Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are merging the streams here. We hope that you're enjoying the new programming. And, of course, Don Moeller and I get together with all sorts of luminaries. I'll be doing all sorts of DC-related stuff here this week as the WRT, WTR. I'm not so sure. The only thing that mattered is the Sea of Red came in here and smacked the purple on the backside on Monday night. It's a short week. Luke Jones is here to discuss the dismantling of the Ravens on Monday night. And the myth of Lamar is one thing, but the reality of Patrick Mahomes, he sort of came in and out like a vapor on Monday night, huh?
He was terrific. And look, by me praising him, I'm not forgiving the Ravens defense. There are plenty of issues we can talk about and we'll talk about here in the next few minutes, but you have to give Patrick Mahomes a lot of credit. Guy is just, it's like he plays at a higher level. You know, he should be in a higher league. I mean, and that's the greatest praise you can offer someone. I mean, it's Brady-like, Manning-like, whoever you want to throw out there. I mean, he was phenomenal. And to have 5 touchdowns, playing in Baltimore, fans or no fans, against a defense that I still think is talented. I still think is going to be one of the better or if not best ones in defenses in the league. He carved them up. And you look at third down, you look at the play calling from Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, you look at Travis Kelce, you look at throws to the back, you look at shovel passes to the fullback, you look at tackle-eligible touchdowns. I mean, Patrick Mahomes did it all. Even plays where the Ravens had pretty good coverage, he would put the ball in an absolutely perfect spot. And a lot of what happened on Monday night, sure, I'll chalk it up to some bad defense and some concerns in some areas that need to be cleaned up. But some of what we saw, or a lot of what we saw, was also Patrick Mahomes doing what he does best, and that's being the best player on the planet. He confirmed that, and as much as we love Lamar Jackson around here, and should continue to love Lamar Jackson around here, let's be very clear about that. Monday's poor performance aside, Mahomes is the best, and he's the best for a reason, and he absolutely showed it by just. I mean, that was a throttling, a dismantling, a destruction. However you want to describe it, he completely just destroyed this Ravens defense on Monday night.
Early in the game, it felt like they had a sort of a fighting chance, right? Like it felt like they came out and could match early on, and then the second drive, not so much. And then you feel like you're not going to see a whole lot of punting in the game to begin with, right? On teams that go on fourth down and whatnot. I felt like as they maybe got back into the game in the third quarter, fourth quarter, I felt like it was the defense's job to win the game as much as it was Lamar's job. And that last dicing, and that's what the Ravens have done, right? Go out there, take away your will, put together 7, 8, 9-minute drive on the road. You can't get the ball back. 10 yards feels like it's not far enough. Mark Ingram's falling 11. We've been that team a lot last year, and even half the year before that. That's who they were in the end, and that really does speak to the defense and speak to Patrick Queen not having such a great night, speaks to Deshaun Elliott not having such a great night, speaks to the fact that when it came time, and Kevin Byrne wasn't even around after the game, the only 2 guys they could pull out of that locker room to come and face the music were Calais Campbell and Jimmy Smith, and Calais Campbell's been here 5 minutes, and, Jimmy Smith, I guess, has become the Yoda of the outfit, right, to be able to come out and say what Marcus Peters and the kid from Alabama, the flipping kid from Alabama, I should say, that they never come out and sing the music, right? Like, so this is going to be a rough week for them. And as much as Lamar is going to carry the cross in all of this, defense wasn't very good against the best player on earth either. Lamar didn't play against Mahomes. They did.
No, that's why I said, I mean, this is a team loss. Offense, defense, coaching. I guess you give the special teams credit, right? I mean, thank God for Devin Duvernay and Justin Tucker, I suppose. But you're absolutely right. And I'm glad you brought up the third quarter, because the defense, they came out and they played some good football in the third quarter. I mean, they forced the fumble. They get the turnover on downs. And, I mean, the Ravens score a touchdown, first play of the fourth quarter, and suddenly it's a 7-point game. Now, they had just gotten 2 stops in the third quarter, but at that point, this is the defense's opportunity to then say, all right, We've flipped the game here. We've just gotten 2 stops. We're going to get the ball back again, whether it's 3 and out or they can get a first down or 2, whatever. We're going to get the ball back, and we're going to be in business. We're going to have possession of the ball, and it's going to be a 1-score deficit in the fourth quarter. I mean, with the way the game went in the first half, what more could you ask for in that scenario?
That was dreamy, right? Like when
No
they
question.
get it back to within 1 score, you're like, all right. I mean, all things considered, I'll take this for an onside kick at the end, or Lamar gets the ball back with 1 minute and 18 seconds, and we can do something. Whatever that there would have been an ending that wasn't so anticlimactic as it was, which was we're going to shove the ball down your throat, and your defense can't stop us, and you're not going to take the ball away again.
Right. And so you look at that drive right off the bat. They get a 3rd and 5. Mahomes finds Edwards-Helaire out of the backfield. We talked about this. One of my concerns, and we saw this in each of the last 2 meetings against Kansas City. Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy know the Ravens like to blitz a lot. Patrick Mahomes knows the Ravens like to blitz a lot. What did we see? Throws to the back. We saw screens. In that case, it was Edwards-Helaire getting out of the backfield, moving the chains. Later on, 3rd and 10, Matthew Judon blitzes, and there's no one covering the flat. Patrick Mahomes takes off the right edge, run to the right. No one is out there for contain, and he picks up a first down. I mean, these were just over and over and over, 3rd down after 3rd down. And a lot of these were 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9, 3rd and 12. It's not as though they were a bunch of 3rd and 1s and 2s. They were some long.
You had a chance to make a play. You literally had 6 seconds to make a play. Yes.
Yeah, they just could not do it. 10 of 13, and like I said, one of those stops came at the very end of the game when it didn't matter at that point. But just an absolutely back-breaking drive that was. Those 2 big 3rd down conversions, and then it's almost as though they're rubbing your nose in it when they throw a tackle-eligible touchdown. Not saying that there's anything, I'm not talking about unwritten rules here or anything like that, but when they throw a tackle-eligible touchdown to their veteran left tackle, Eric Fisher, after they threw to Anthony Sherman earlier in the game on the shovel pass for the touchdown.
By the way, I had about 10 of you in the press box that I actually know and follow on Twitter. Pica was one of them. Pica was at the game. Everybody commented about how loud the Chiefs coaches were.
They exploded. Now, and this
in an empty stadium. So right.
And this won't mean as much to our listeners because they don't have much of a perspective on the press box. But they actually, Nestor, they essentially added an extra coach's room, and the press box is a little bit smaller for this year because social distancing and all that. But it was an absolute roar. I mean, think about it. Eric Fisher's been in the league a long time, and he's a left tackle. Anytime we always talk about it, fat guy touchdowns, right? I mean, you see the hashtag, whatever.
Well, John Ogden's still eating off that. It got him in the Hall of Fame, right?
Hey, John Ogden had 2 career touchdown catches. So I think it was 2. I know he had at least 2. But that was just such a back-breaking drive. I mean, they really, to their credit, the defense got off the mat in the 3rd quarter and they get those 2 stops. And you think they have a chance, and they can make one more, and you got a chance to tie the football game, and they just couldn't. And Kansas City takes nearly 7 minutes off the clock. It's a 2-score game again, and there's a little over 8 minutes to go at that point. You knew it was over at that point. I mean, barring a real miracle that was just going to be so different from anything we had seen over the course of the first 52 minutes of the game, you just knew at that point this isn't in the cards because the defense, they got the 2 stops to start the second half. Good for them, but they had a chance to get the ball back once again for their offense, and they couldn't get it done. Too much Patrick Mahomes, too much Edwards-Helaire, too much Travis Kelce, just too much Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they won the battle at every level on Monday night, and for large stretches of that game, it wasn't particularly close.
Luke Jones is here. He is Baltimore Luke out on Twitter and Luke at WNST.net. I want to give some love to our friends at Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. I worked out the tenders the other day. I will be back for the 2-piece. You can get the box for the game against the Washington football team. I'm going to say the R word. I'm going to get fined this week for saying the R word. I know I am because I'm doing a lot of R word conversation this week. But the R word should be ROFO and Royal Farms. Make sure you're using your app when you're pumping your gas. You get your chicken for free. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. And the Kona Blend in my cup. You know, we talk about the defense and where the playmakers are, and it is fascinating, right? Like, we talk about the Jedi game and then the game last year out there kind of early in the year, and Earl Thomas. I distinctly remember being at Earl Thomas's locker room last year at Arrowhead Stadium. I remember Brandon Williams talking to the media after that game, because that locker room so uniquely 1971, the visiting locker room at Arrowhead Stadium. And who was on the field, and who was on the field 2 years ago, whether it was C.J. Mosley, you know, guys that are sort of long gone now. Who else was on that team that I haven't thought about? Eric Weddle was on that team, right? So, like, how much the players have changed. Then there's the profile of the 2020 Ravens defense, and that would mean more Marcus Peters, less Earl Thomas, more Marlon Humphrey, less who was the guy? Brandon Carr. You know, I'm thinking about these guys, Tony Jeffersons. You know, these guys that were here and well paid and well thought of, and are now no longer here. And who's on the field on Monday night when Pat Mahomes is, you know, jamming the ball for 8 minutes down their throat? Who can't get him off the field? Who's going to be the player? And I don't want to go back to Deshaun Elliott or even the rookie and Patrick Queen, but where are the playmakers? You know what I mean? Like, who's going to make big plays in this defense now that there's no more Ed Reed, there's no more Ray Lewis, there's no more Terrell Suggs. All of that's gone. Right now it's Brandon Williams maybe and Jimmy Smith, who kind of came out and took the bullets for the media Monday night after the game. But who's going to lead us, as they like to ask?
Well, I mean, the leadership question, I mean, that's a fair question when you don't have a Ray Lewis or an Ed Reed or a Terrell Suggs.
Who's their best player? Matt Judon, who couldn't set the edge, who looked very one-dimensional on Monday night?
I would say their best players are Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters. And Marcus Peters has more interceptions than anyone in the NFL since he entered the league. So he definitely qualifies as a playmaker. But when you're talking about your corners being your best players, which that's a great thing. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but you do need guys to make plays and to be able to come up big in some key spots. And once again, the pass rush. Did they get some pressure on Patrick Mahomes at times? Yeah, of course they did. But they almost exclusively had to use numbers to do that. And when you use numbers, what does that mean for the back end of the defense? You have fewer guys in coverage. So you can blitz, and yeah, you might get close. But if you don't get there, or if Patrick Mahomes escapes, as we saw him do on a few occasions, and a couple times where the Ravens were, you know, a gnat's eyelash away from stripping the ball from behind and things of that nature. But if those things don't happen, he's going to make you pay. And, you know, to be very clear about this, there is no best practices approach to stopping Patrick Mahomes. No one's been able to do it. That's why the guy's the best in the league. And that's why he's rapidly moving up the list of a guy who might be one of the all-time best ever before his career is done. But you do look at this defense, and we've talked about it a lot the last couple of years. Four-man pass rush, something they just have not been able to do. They have, you know, for lack of a better term, a bunch of guys at outside linebacker right now. And even Matthew Judon, who's paid, you know, as a franchise tag guy, you know, not the production that hasn't had the kind of production that really matches up with being paid at that level, you know, at least year in and year out. So you do look at that. You do look at the linebackers, and, you know, you mentioned Patrick Queen. It was definitely a tough night for him. It was a tough night for Deshaun Elliott. I thought, you know, Chuck Clark at times had some rough plays as well. I mean,
well, let me say this about our defense, because as much as you want to praise Peters on one end, praise Humphrey on the other end, and they're great and all that, the Chiefs win and eat down the middle of the field, right? Like, literally.
Yeah.
And as do the Ravens to some degree. You know what I mean? Like, the fact that you have the best corners up against Lamar Jackson, that doesn't mean he's not going to beat you 45-6, right? And the same thing would be said for Patrick Mahomes, where he doesn't need to eat on the outside. He'll eat down the middle. He'd prefer to eat down the middle. And with, you know, Edwards-Helaire, and with the way they try to run the ball, and with the way Mahomes could still run the ball, and with the way Kelsey creates incredible mismatches throughout the field in that Gronkowski, Gonzalez kind of way, right? The way we did here for a long time with Heap and Shannon Sharp and some others, that to have that, And you hope you have that with Mark Andrews on our side. But that needs to be answered, right? And I would say for the middle of the field, Patrick Queen got himself an education. And I remember when Dwayne Starks got an education one night, right, too, early in their career. You better hope that's the worst Patrick Queen looks around here.
Yeah, and I mean, he's a rookie. And let's keep in mind, I mean, this was a kid who started 1 year at LSU, and I don't think that's as much an indictment of him as it's a compliment to the talent level at that program. But I mean, just look at the final stat sheet. The Chiefs had 5 different players finish with 62 or more receiving yards. They just had so many weapons. And let's be very clear about this. Yes, the Ravens played poorly on defense. Yeah, there were some things they need to address and clean up. And I had mentioned to you, I had some concerns, not necessarily in the big picture about not having Tavon Young, but just seeing how all those pieces, those puzzle pieces fit on the back end when you take out a player that you were counting on to be a big part of what you do. Sometimes it takes a couple weeks for that to get fully calibrated.
Tavon Young was an 85% snap guy on the field.
I mean, yeah, because you're in nickel. I mean, you're in base so little. I mean, the Ravens are at this point in time, 2019, 2020, they have games where they don't line up in base defense once. I mean, they just don't. They'll have some games where teams run the ball a little more. Maybe they run a little more 12 personnel, 2 tight end sets. But by and large, they are in their, quote, base defense very, very little. In fact, I know Aaron Schatz from Football Outsiders, you and I have talked to him at the Super Bowl and talked to him over the years. He's even said at this point, we should stop calling it a front 7. It's really a front 6 because every team out there other than, I think, Seattle last year is running nickel over
as
half
base.
the time.
As base,
I mean,
yeah.
Nickel, and in the Ravens case, dime, which, I mean, Mahomes just carved up their dime package on Monday night. I mean, it was ugly.
Well, that speaks to the depth of missing, the 6th or 7th or 8th guy you'd be putting on the field who you don't want on the field. You don't want Anthony Averett on the field. You don't want too much Jimmy Smith on the field, right? Like, that's just where it is right now.
Or in the case of Jimmy Smith, he would have been on the field plenty, but what's the role? Now it's more so in the nickel. He's playing outside corner again rather than being able to do some hybrid things with him. Now, he did cover Travis Kelce. In fact, I think he was the one pass that Kelce didn't catch. I believe Jimmy Smith was on coverage on that one off the top of my head. But, that changed that dynamic. And now you're putting Anthony Averett on the field. And that's not to say that Anthony Averett is a terrible football player, but he's your 5th corner. And that's, you are having to account for some relative weaknesses at that point. We talked about this with Earl Thomas. Look, Deshaun Elliott looked fine the first couple weeks, but was he really tested? We saw him tested on Monday night, and guess what? It wasn't pretty. That's not to say he won't be fine in the big picture.
Well, Earl Thomas must have been watching that game, signing with the Houston Texans,
and probably laughing about it,
thinking, we'd have a better chance to win if I were on the field.
And that's from his perspective. And look, I'm not going to begin to start taking his side even, but he's going to look at that, and that was part of the equation here. Look, you can say that you have to move on from him, and that might be the absolute right decision, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to have some growing pains in the process, because you're talking about a kid in Deshaun Elliott who had played in 6 career games, 40 career defensive snaps entering the season. So you're going to have some growing pains there. In the same way, as you mentioned with Patrick Queen, he's a rookie. It was his 3rd NFL game. He just turned 21 years old over the summer. He's going to get better. And one thing I do want to stress, and you alluded to this, and I think it's important to mention this, especially in this day and age where we know this game is about offense at this point in time. Let's just call a spade a spade. I mean, offenses rule in the NFL in 2020. They went up against the best. And I can recall some games way back in the day, as much as we want to romanticize Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and Terrell Suggs and Adalys Thomas and Haloti Ngata and Trevor Price, and go down the list of all these good to great defensive players that the Ravens had. There were still some times that Peyton Manning got them. There were still times that, in fact, Peyton Manning got them plenty. There were times that Tom Brady got them. There were times where they gave up lots of points. It did happen on occasion. So that is one thing I want to stress. As much as we're going through therapy, right? If Ravens fans are going through therapy after this one and thinking, oh my gosh, I thought this was the best team in the league, and they got their butts kicked at home, and they're never going to beat the Chiefs, and Patrick Mahomes is better than Lamar, and go down the list of all the different concerns you can have, and many of those concerns are fair. I'm not going to try to be dismissive of it, but I do want everyone to keep the proper context and understand that the Ravens went up against the best team in the NFL on Monday night. And yeah, they got their butts kicked. But, and I said this in a previous conversation, I can remember things being not so great for the 2000 Ravens midway through the season. I can remember things being terrible for the 2012 Ravens in December.
I remember the Flacco plank and the firing of Cam
Exactly.
Cameron. So
So
yeah, I
let's
mean,
just some
exhaling
perspective.
here, right? Exhaling on October 1st and saying we're the second best team for now. We got to go play football the next 3 months and take care of our own business, so that maybe the Chiefs would have to come back here on Monday when we can have some fans at the game, or excuse me, in January when we have some fans at the game. Maybe I don't know where I am on fans and home field and what we're talking about having games here in January versus Kansas City. In a normal environment, that's what we'd be talking about. In a normal environment, we wouldn't be talking about Patrick Mahomes getting on a plane and working in silence. And, I watched a lot of ESPN on Monday night while you were eating your box lunch. I hope the roast beef was good. Steve Young was talking a lot about working in silence and how beneficial that is to a guy like Patrick Mahomes. And throughout the game, you would hear the silence amidst the fake noise. And to me, it probably the golfer in him, the pitcher in his dad or whatever. I bet silence works a lot better for Mahomes in real terms than what the noise would have been. He was a better quarterback without my wife screaming at him.
Oh, no question about it. And that was one thing. I mean, we can always talk about home field advantage, right? Other than, when Cincinnati's 2-12 in December and there's 15,000
But my point would be
there.
losing the game would be, oh my God, we lost home field advantage. We'll have to
sure.
go to Kansas City. You and I are thinking we'll get some barbecue. But they'll have fans out there. They had fans from the beginning, right? So if you got to go out there and play in January, chances are they might have 40 or 50,000. It might really be like a real road game if you have to go out there, as opposed to whatever the hell that was on Monday night. So we are getting into this. I mean, the Texans are having fans this week. I sat there last week. It was empty, right?
Right. And one thing I will say, and look, we have no idea what the climate's going to be for the entire NFL or the country come January. We just don't. But
did you pay your taxes?
I did.
Just asking for a friend.
I will say this, that it is very strange to see road quarterbacks using hard counts at the line of scrimmage and it working. It happened with New Orleans Sunday night, Aaron Rodgers. But I do think specifically when you look at how the Ravens like to operate defensively, and I mean, I don't want to say that this, but because on the road you're playing defense with a quieter crowd, right? I mean, if you have a good crowd, a home team, your crowd's quiet, so your quarterback can function at the line of scrimmage. But normally when you're playing at home, and when Patrick Mahomes is coming into Baltimore in a normal season, you have 71,000 people screaming their heads off. And the way the Ravens like to play defense with those amoeba fronts where you'll have 7 or 8 guys at the line of scrimmage and 5 guys are rushing, 3 of those guys are going to drop, or someone's going to come in on a delayed blitz. Mahomes is at the line of scrimmage trying to process that, trying to look for tendencies, trying to look for tells because of all of his film study and their advanced scouting, and every team has that kind of stuff. But all of that's really difficult to do when there's 71,000 going nuts. That becomes far more manageable when it's quiet and there are 250 people there. To your point, it becomes like golf. It becomes practice. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly something that hurt them. But, every team, even right now, maybe January, maybe Arrowhead is 75% capacity. I don't know. But right now, even the stadiums that are hosting fans at this point, it's still a small enough number where the crowd noise isn't overwhelming.
Sounds like Memorial Stadium on a summer night.
Right. So keeping some perspective there. But I mean, you look at how the Ravens typically want to thrive at home. I mean, the crowd's a big part of that. I mean, confusing quarterbacks, overwhelming, pre-snap penalties, delay of games, forcing the opponent to burn a timeout. I mean, those are all elements of home field advantage that, the Ravens didn't have last night. And look, they could have played an Arrowhead Monday night and the result could have been exactly the same and we wouldn't even be talking about it then. But, it's definitely, we've talked about the surreal weirdness to these empty stadium games. We've talked about it across sports, but it's definitely something that teams have to adjust to. And to your point, when we started talking and breaking this down, it definitely felt like the Ravens, you want to call it mojo, their energy, whatever, however you want to describe it, it wasn't there. It felt off, and clearly Kansas City had a lot to do with that when they, after they take the lead after the Ravens kick a field goal in the opening possession, but they did not get calibrated. And this goes back to our overall theme that we've talked about, that Lamar Jackson headlines it because he's the quarterback and the league MVP and all of that, but this team's got to figure out a way to be able to regroup and function when they get out of sorts a little bit. And that's not to say when you're down 4 touchdowns, because most teams are finished at that point, but when it's not going according to plan, how do you adapt? How are you adjusting? And this team, fortunately for them, and a testament to them, they haven't been in that position a whole lot going back to the end of 2018. But when you are, you've got to figure out a way to function at a higher level. And Monday was not a good example of that. And for all of the talk that we had post Tennessee loss and off season, and when we were talking about if there was going to be a season, we talked about the Ravens playing off schedule and being able to adjust and get off the mat and erase deficits and do all those things that the great teams are going to have to do at some point in time. And Monday was a test for that, and they failed the test.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke, and Luke at WNST.net. We are merging the streams, WNST.net and Baltimore Positive. Big thanks to our partners making that happen, including Leonard Raskin at Raskin Global. We'll have Leonard on this week talking some football and finances, as well as all of our friends, including Todd Schuler from Blondell Miller Schuler. A little insight into the law game, as well as some football insights. You can find them at damngoodlawyer.com. We have an entire section dedicated to business and health and education and arts and all the music classic and all the WNST classic that we've done here over the course of years. You'll find all that out at the new BaltimorePositive.com and, of course, WNST.net AM 1570, where we never stop talking Baltimore sports and Baltimore Positive.